Well, good morning, everyone, to be here again. We start this roundtable with very distinguished group of guests. Most of them have the opportunity to hear before. Dr. José Vicente Die, that yesterday gave a fantastic talk about the CRISP. Before now it's Dr. Justus Wesseler. Also, yesterday he gave a fantastic talk that I think that it's not necessary to make a further presentation. Dr. Rich Roberts, you have just heard about him, and then also avoid the presentation to have more time for discussion. And then I will have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Viviane Naimy. That is the only person that you have not had the opportunity to hear before. Dr. Viviane Naimy is a professor of finance and dean of the Faculty of Business Administration and Economics at the Notre University in Beirut in Lebanon. An expert in financial econometrics and risk management, she has an extensive record of research publications in these fields. As dean, she successfully led the faculty through the international accreditation and other major programmatic accreditations. And driven by a deep commitment for social impact, Professor Naimy has made hunger and poverty reduction central of her academic leadership. She initiated the Journal of Sustainability Economics in partnership with Notre University and served as its managing editor. She is also the co-founder and president of the Sustainable Farming Technology Association, which promotes sustainable agricultural practices to alleviate poverty and food insecurity in Lebanon and the region. Outside her academic work, Professor Naimy is a passionate piano player and composer. Welcome, Viviane, to being here. And my first question will be for you. Uh, how can multidisciplinary collaboration across science, economics, and policy accelerate progress toward the zero hunger goal, especially in affected countries like Lebanon?
Yeah, thank you for this timely question, especially in the context of Lebanon, where we are dealing not only with economic challenges and collapse, but we are facing a severe war on our soil. So, in situation this complex, hunger is never an issue of scarcity only, a scarcity in food or in food production or in food insecurity. It's, in my opinion, an infrastructure issue. It is an economic issue. It's a governance issue. So, naturally, the solution has to be interdisciplinary. In our case, the collaboration started with Sir Richard Roberts. As you know, he's known for his advocacy for GMOs as a tool to fight hunger. I'm an economist, a finance professor. So we started asking what would it take for us to introduce GMO to Lebanon in a way that is not only scientifically sound, but economically viable and socially accepted. So, from that, we launched a series of studies. And one of the most compelling findings in our first study came from our first study. It was that if 70% of Lebanese farmers adopt GMOs, we could reduce poverty in rural areas from 55% to 36%. This is an incredible, dramatic shift in a country where we have the multidimensional poverty increased from 28% in 2019 to 82% in 2021. So our results were validated by yield data, and we noticed, for example, that apple crops showed incredible and significant gain, okay, in volume and resilience, of course. Then we looked at specific crops. That was the purpose of our second study. And we focused on tomatoes and potatoes, and we found that GM tomatoes could increase a farmer's income by $10,000 per hectare in the short term, and up to $50,000 over a 5-year period, over 5 years. So also that is not a theoretical number. It was based on stakeholder interviews, data collection, and field data. And also, of course, we used the financial modeling and simulation. But we didn't stop on this. I decided to found the Sustainable Farming Technology Association amid the war. We were, under severe war, and now it is recognized by the Lebanese government. I'm so happy. And the main purpose is to institutionalize all our efforts, to give them a standard shape, a credible shape. And through this association, we are combining finance, economics, and policy to meet the objective of this association, which is training farmers, advocate for legislation. We have already the infrastructure, and prepare for a full-scale implementation. Okay, as soon, of course, as the situation allows. We are still under war. We cannot really do whatever we want to do. So, to answer your question and to sum up, this is not about only one discipline saving the day. Definitely not. So, it's about creating a real ecosystem for change where maybe genetic research in Lebanon, economics, and local governance, they all work together. So our dream, our ultimate dream, is to make this model works in Lebanon. And if this will happen, it will be an amazing case study to be implemented in other fragile countries.
Rich, would you like to add something to this?
Well, I think what I would say is that the advantage of Lebanon and one or two other countries that I'm hoping can also be brought into this kind of scheme is that at the moment there are no government regulations saying you can't grow GMOs in Lebanon. And so that means that one can try to develop crops that will be very specific for Lebanon, for the climate there, things that will work well. And if we're successful, if Viviane is successful, then we will be able to show other countries exactly what can be done by adopting GMOs, how it can help smallholder farmers. It will be as good a demonstration as you could wish for. Perhaps it will enable other governments to change their minds about these crops.
Justus, would you like to add something to this? Because it's a topic that I think is interesting for everyone.
Yes, I'm happy. I'm happy to add on this as well. It can be an excellent case to demonstrate how useful seed improvements can be for farmers. What we know from a number of studies in many countries, what is important to translate this into something that will be sustainable is that we need, together with not only having access to these technologies, but we also need to have a very successful private sector seed market that is able to deliver these seeds on a continuous time frame to the farmer. So that will be also important to have the new technologies together with the seed markets being implemented.
And José Vicente, as an agriculture engineer, you have any opinion about this? take the true max also.
Yeah, and in the same context, following the idea that yesterday, well, first, it's crystal clear for someone who's the privilege of being here on this metaphoric table. It's me. So I'm the person who says thank you, José Ramón. Following the reasoning yesterday, and we need a new legislation. Right now in the European Commission, this is under debate, and it's important we communicate and we explain the things that have been here during the whole meeting. It's very important. I think it's important not repeating the mistake that we made in the 80s or 90s with transgenic crops. It's very important we explain these things. At any opportunity we have, we explain this, the general public, general audience, we explain these things to policymakers because the stakes are very high. We're talking about food, so that part of that commitment to explain these things. So Richard said we have to talk to politicians. Depending on your area, you have access to one group or another. But I think as a public servant, it's a must. We have to explain the results. We have to explain the research and that we have, and we need a new legal framework that allows us, that first guarantees security, food security for consumers, but that has to be also a practical law that leaves some space, some room for innovation.
Thank you. I will go further with this question about communication from the scientific part to the politicians. But Justus, I have a question for you. This: how come that many still suffer from hunger in a world of plenty, as we have here, from yesterday to today, and especially after the facts that were shown by Sir Richard?
Yes, this is for many of us surprising. As I was mentioning yesterday already, if you look at the supply of food that is available in the world, still we have 800 million and more that go hungry to bed every night. Now, one of the major obstacles that has been identified in the agricultural economics, but also in the economics literature for these still to be observed is that in many countries that are suffering from food security, that the institutional environment is protecting for getting access to solutions that would help the people that are suffering from hunger. And for example, there's this famous book by Acemoglu and Robinson, Why Nations Fail, and they explain in very length on how the institutional environment is basically the major issue that prevents further improvement in countries. And that is what we basically have to work on. And then the work that Richard is doing and others are doing is basically really trying to convince governments that institutional reforms will be implemented that then can help. And that then becomes less technologically relevant in the sense that you can then choose the technologies that would benefit, and it might be either this or that. For us, it's very difficult to project what will be the best for Spain in 5 years, what will be the best for Lebanon in 5 or 10 years. But we need to have a country, we have to have an economic environment that is open for new technological changes to rapidly, I stress this, rapidly reach the market.
Any comment?
Well, I think I would do it more broadly than agriculture is biotechnology. You know, since we discovered recombinant DNA long time ago now, we've had opportunities within biology, within research, to make improvements in so many things. Health, huge areas. You know, if you look at the current health situation, it's incredible. Compare it with 50 years ago, right? people died 50 years ago of diseases which we cure overnight at the moment. Biotech can only continue to do better. It's a wonderful technology, and it affects every living thing on Earth. Plants are just one example, cows for breeding and so on. But humans, we can do wonders for human health in many different ways. The COVID vaccines were just a first step. But of course, unless we can get politicians to agree, A, to fund science, and B, to not try and denigrate science and pretend that we're useless, that's the biggest problem that we have to solve. We have to convince the politicians to listen to the scientists that they fund. Otherwise, why fund us? Well, they've already told us in the US they don't want to fund us anymore, so they obviously don't want to listen to us. So we're going to have to find ways of reaching the constituents, reaching the people, and making them insist that the politicians listen to us.
Yeah. Have you any comment? No? Okay, let's go to Jose. You was talking yesterday about the CRISPR, but can you explain us how the gene editing is generating increasing interest for the improvement of agriculture crops, and what can we do now with CRISPR that we couldn't do before?
The thing is that we are playing a new game. It's absolutely a significant.
No,
It's a very it's something radically different, because you could reduce. There are recent scientific literature showing that you can reduce clearly half of the time that it takes you to release in a new variety. Rough numbers, 10 years, more or less. It depends if we are talking about apple trees, or we are talking about non-goody crops. So it's clear that there are many cases, but in general, rough numbers, 10 years, releasing a variety. With CRISPR technology, rough numbers, half of the time. But just a bit context to make sense of these numbers. It's important to understand that the main characteristic behind the traditional methods is randomness. That's why it takes so time. It takes a long time. The main characteristic behind new technologies, transgenic technology or CRISPR technology, is accuracy. We know what we are doing. It's something very precise. That's why we can reduce the time. And another thing that we can save a lot of time is because usually we work with some kind of traits, some kind of mutations that are very well conserved in a pathway. So a pathway is like one gene that works with another gene, works in another gene, so they work in the same context. So that's a metabolic pathway. And sometimes we can treat one mutation that affects one of those genes in one particular crop, but in nature things are conserved. So if you know that you can treat one mutation to act on one particular metabolic pathway in this crop, then you have the knowledge to do exactly the same in another crop. That's why things go too fast with this technology. A very quick example. Anthocyanin pathway has to do with antioxidant levels, and the product of the anthocyanin pathway is blue color in some crops. Blueberry, bilberry, mulberry, for example. They are very well-known crops in the United States. Or grape, even grape, we have grapes with dark colors. If you have one mutation and you affect that one particular gene in that metabolic pathway in grape, it's going to work in the same metabolic pathway in blueberry, because the metabolic pathway is conserved. So you can extract some knowledge from one crop, applying this technology, and apply it directly in another crop. That's why the reason why things go faster. And those numbers that have been estimated make sense.
Someone would like to add something? Okay.
I think they agree.
Okay, then my next question is for Viviane. Is what are the main obstacles preventing the adoption of innovative agricultural technologies such as the GMOs that we have talking about, and regions where hunger is the one on rise, and how can we collectively overcome them?
Yeah, thank you. It's a difficult question. However, in my opinion, that the problem is not in the lack of innovation. There are many viable and science-backed solutions. I think that the problem is in getting those solutions to the people who need them most, and especially smallholder farmers in emerging and fragile economies. So, again, in the context of Lebanon, and according to our study, we identified 4 barriers, okay, against the adoption of GMOs, despite their measurable and clear benefit. So let me start with the first one, is policy and regulatory paralysis. So this is the biggest hurdle that we have. So in Lebanon, and I think as discussed by Sir Roberts, in many countries across the global south, okay, there are either no policies, okay, for GMOs, or outright resistance rooted in outdated assumption or ignorance or misinformation, you name it the way you want. So, unfortunately, regulatory authorities, they often lack the expertise in biotechnology. And this misinformation is being amplified by international activists, such as the Greenpeace parties. And unfortunately, they have shaped the public opinion, which led to the hesitation of policymakers. So it's a circle, it's a vicious circle. And as Sir Rich said this morning, that even after 35 years of research confirming that GMOs are safe, people are still claiming that, oh, they are unsafe, they kill, they create cancer. So what can we do more than they are confirmed? Their safety was confirmed by the WHO, by the National Academy of Science. So unfortunately, this obstacle is blocking innovation. And unfortunately, these technologies, these transforming technologies, are not able to give their fruit. The second hurdle is farmer hesitation and information gaps. According to our experience in our research, farmers are pragmatic, and farmers are not risk taker. They are risk averse. So, and at the same time, they're not against science. However, they need to trust the process. They need to make sure that they can use those seeds, that they can afford their price. However, and here, comes the importance of our association to tell them that we are here, we want to train you, and we want to give you a local validation. So that, we need to give this local validation, and this is the purpose of our next step, God willing. The third hurdle is the economic instability in Lebanon, and let me here give you some statistics. In Lebanon, we lost 90% of the value of our currency. So to start here, and all supply chains are shattered. At the same time, the war, has worsened things. So transport routes for seeds, fertilizers, equipment, okay, are up to 70% disrupted. And prices of basic agricultural inputs, they have more than tripled. And let me give you an example. Diesel fuel used for irrigation okay, has gone from $15 per barrel to $80 per barrel due not only to inflation but also to scarcity, unfortunately. So if we assume that technologies are here, unfortunately, we don't have the system. We need the systemic, embracement of these farmers to make these technologies efficient and usable. The fourth hurdle is the absence of scalable demonstration. So here again, the Sustainable Farming Technology Association should be here to do a pilot project and to prove to these farmers that yes, using those technologies can have a big potential. As shown in our study, we moved from $10,000 gain in the short term to $50,000, over a 5-year period.
A question that I think that's floating of the ambience of this conference is about the communication, that the problems of communication that we have. The question is for each one of you. How can we scientists be more effectively communicate the benefits and the safety of genetic engineering, or GMOs, etc., to policymakers and especially to the civil society, to the general public, and then counter the story told by the Greenpeace and others? How can we do that?
Yeah. Let me give you the example of Lebanon. I started from my university with my students, with economics students. This is something important because they will be leading the way. I started with covering many regions in Lebanon with stakeholders like smallholder farmers, by training them, by teaching them, in a way that is accessible for them. And I did many interviews also, and I invited ministers and previous ministers of agriculture just to show them that GMOs is something really beautiful and nice. We invited Sir Richard many times online and in person to lecture. Lebanon is a very small country, okay? So we start from scratch, and I believe that in a span of 2 years or so, we can really inform people. And also, we invited the media to cover everything. We did press release.
So I see two issues here. So one of the issues is that many scientists, when they give lectures, don't talk in language that the general public can understand. And that means the politicians don't understand them either. And it would be good if you're going to become a scientist, during your training, you get taught how to speak to the general public. Because this is how ultimately we know whether or not we can talk properly to them. I have something that I give to students called a grandmother's test. I say, you must go home, talk to your grandmother, and explain to her in language she can understand what you do every day. And the way you test whether you've done that successfully is, can your grandmother then go and talk to all of her friends and tell them how smart you are? And I think this is something that we should be teaching students, maybe in economics too, but certainly in science, because communication is key, absolutely key. We want politicians to fund us. We want to be supported by the general public. But if they don't understand what we're saying, we're not going to do anything there. Another aspect of this is why there has been such a growth in disinformation and people not knowing what the truth is, and that is social media. Personally, I don't want to have anything to do with social media. I found that there is so much bad stuff going on, but the thing that disturbs me more than anything else is that thanks to AI, people click on a link, they like it, and they'll get more of the same stuff. And so all that happens is that whatever you felt about a subject when you first come across it just gets reinforced and amplified, and you never see the other side. And I think there should be a way that we could stop that in some way. I don't know how to do it, but maybe we have to rely on the AI community, like our friend from Argentina over there. But there must be ways that we can deal with this. And, this is something that's terrible because there's a lot of disinformation, and it ends up going into politicians too. If you look at Donald Trump, every time he opens his mouth, he tells a lie. And apparently, in politics, it's perfectly okay to lie. Personally, I think there should be a law that if you lie as a politician, you can be sued, and if found guilty, you go to prison. I would like to see why politicians wouldn't vote for such a law. Don't they want to know the truth? Well, I guess apparently not.
I think here we have some ideas to share about that. Justus, please.
Let me in. I think Sir Richard Roberts has addressed two of the major issues there. How to address this, and that is communication, and how we should look into social media. So that basically requires for us, even if we don't like it, that we perhaps have also to be more present on social media to be a countervailing power there. What is also important for us as scientists is that we publish our research on these topics that go beyond just the biological, technological developments, like what Viviane was mentioning for Lebanon, having a case study there. And we need more scientific publications out there for also to support those in the policy circles that are supportive, so that they can also then use the scientific evidence that we are producing within their political circles, within the debates that they are having. And another important issue is then we have to organize events like this that we have here today, and many other events, like similar to what we are doing with the ICABR. We organize every year the conference bringing together scientists, policymakers, and private sector people to discuss new developments in this, and also to inform about what is important there from a policy level. And these are issues where we can make a contribution, and this is what we have in our own hands. Many other things are more difficult for us to influence. We should try. We should not give up. But these are the things that we can do, and maybe we can do more than we currently are doing there.
José?
Same idea. The important things have been said. I don't know. I think if you work with applied genetics, applied science, you work for to solve problems, societal problems in the short term. And if you work with basic science, you want to solve the problems of the society in the long term. So we all work for the society. So is the idea of communicating these things to society is a must. We are public servants. And in my experience, also, I think groups like Greenpeace, they are good when they want to put their message, but just their message. So, but they are reluctant to be in forums like this, to debate about these ideas. So it's, if I can put my message in a national TV or in a newspaper, or their message, but knowing the fact of discussing about these principles. So I think it's important, and I'm selling my book right now. I think it's important. We have to communicate these ideas in every context that we have the opportunity, because society will never fund something that they don't understand. So we need to communicate in a very clear way what we are doing, the applications of our work, and the benefits of our work. And if society understands these things, I think it could make a significant difference.
I think that really we need to go in deep a little bit more about this, because Sir Richard mentioned something that I think is key, is that it should be mandatory that in all the university studies, the people receive training on how to communicate the science, the knowledge, the facts, because we are losing the battle uh, against these people that really know how can they do it. And I have an example that I would like to share with you. I was attending 2 years ago a meeting, and three young ladies, Spaniards, but living in the UK. I was in 2023, 24, and they was a study at Oxford University, and there was telecommunication, and then they realized that their generation don't read newspaper, any kind of newspaper, and said, of course, not in piece of paper, but in web, because they was not interested, because it's too much number of characters. And then they said, no, we realized that the people are not informed and they are using other sources. And then they decide to use TikTok as a source of information. And then they create a company that do something very simple. They read a new, they transform in a TikTok language, and they explain in the language that the people are able to understand. And then they not only succeed, but they winning a lot of money, and there are more than 30 people working on that company. And then my question now for all of you is, how can we use in our favor this kind of things like the social media, YouTube, or the TikTok, or this kind, because it's obvious that this new generation is using these sources as a source of information. What do you think about? Is a question that I would like to open to discuss. Have you any opinion about that?
Uh, I'm not against social media and all its shapes. It's beautiful. Now, the problem is that unfortunately, these type of medias, they're not making the synapses in the brain to connect together. So when we read, when we solve problems, we are training our brain to work efficiently and properly. However, when we are scrolling on TikTok, as if we are numbed completely. So, any activity that can activate the brain and can connect synapses together is welcome. But I can assure you that neither Instagram nor TikTok nor all these things can really enhance the work and the connection of our synapses, unfortunately. We need to read, be it on papers, on internet, on our laptops, from our mobiles. However, we need to read. This is indispensable.
Rich?
Well, I think I've already told you how I feel about social media, of which TikTok is a part. I mean, what would be good is if when kids are growing up, they're taught to question facts, whether they hear them from their parents or their teachers or wherever. It would be good if we encourage them to question. And unfortunately, very often, most parents tell their kids, you do what I say, you listen to me, because I'm the boss, I know what's going on. And if they start to question us, we get put out, and we don't like this. So maybe we also need some lessons for parents too on how to deal with our children. But I think if children were told, well, here's a good source where you can go and find out whether something is true or not, that would be good. And there's actually an initiative in the US that's been started by Steve Ballmer, who used to be the head of Microsoft, called USA Facts, F-A-C-T-S, Facts, in which he tries to present on a fairly regular basis facts about aspects of life in the US. And I'm trying to get to him and convince him that he should expand that into science and be trying to get some science facts into the hands of people. But something like that would be good. But I think we got to make sure that parents behave properly and don't tell their kids to stop asking questions. Asking questions, curiosity, this is great. This is the best thing you can do, especially if you want to raise a scientist. That's the way to get them going.
Mm-hmm. Justus?
Yes, I think I fully like to support this, that we have to start already with the children at young age to think critically. Basically, this is what we love them to do. This also requires, I would say, that we bring them in contact with this social media, that we address these issues, how social media is working in school. To ignore it, I think that would be one of the major mistakes that we are making, because it's a factor of life. And if we don't respond to these facts in life, I think then we may create a bias and create more problems than otherwise. So we need to pick this up and then have also this being addressed within the schools, how to use these social medias, what are the issues related to social medias, to critically assess this. And that, I think, that is where we can play a role as parents as well as scientists, to also introduce this with the power that we have in the educational system, that they pay more attention. And then let me just introduce one example how important this social media can be. We did an analysis using Weibo data, so that is the social media in China that is very widely used, and looking using semantic analysis how they look at GMOs in China. Right, and what you could observe is at the beginning, China, there's a lot of anti-GMO movement there. And we could track this. And then we had a change in the Chinese government. And out of a sudden, we observed many more statements that were in favor of GMOs before the government just stepped out. And then we saw a change in the sentiments that were related to GMOs. So you can use social media also strategically for placing your own ideas in the media, with, of course, the issue that Richard has mentioned, that if you click on one thing and then the next thing of information you get, that this just reinforces what you have seen before, and that we have to look at our AI experts. That is something that also needs to be addressed, and at least in the European Union, but I'm quite sure also in other areas, the responsible people are aware about this. The question is how we properly address this, but it needs attention as well.
José Vicente?
And again, same idea, more or less. I understand that young people today, they get informed in a very different way as in my time. So we need to reach, because it's important, we need to reach those people. But I see, we use, in our group, we use social media. I have a Twitter account for working topics. Actually, sometimes if you apply for a European project, it's like you are almost forced to develop like a communication program using social media. So this is a must that we have to do. But I agree with the point that we don't want just to cause an impact. We want to explain reasons. So whatever tool you use, I'm not familiar with other tools, TikTok or YouTube, I don't know. The media is good, not if you are able to cause an impact in young people, but if you explain reasons. If that media doesn't allow you to explain reason, then I think we're wasting our time.
I would like to ask Henry about, as an expert in artificial intelligence, what do you think about that? I will give you the microphone, because I think that is something that is on the floor now. I would like to ask you about that.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you something. I was thinking when you were talking, and I'm working in education, so I think that we have to start there. The university is a voice that is very important for the primary and secondary teachers. So I think and I will try to, that I think that we have to work with them in order to spread the word with the students, the children, and I think that they are the future, and they have to start listening all the things that you are saying today. And I will try to do it and to spread that word.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Now, yes, no. Oh, okay. No, just give me. Okay. I think that we have time for one last question that we will answer for all of you, because later I would like to ask the audience to give some question. But you would like to add something, Rich?
No, just say.
No. Yes, we have a question of the audience. In 5 minutes, we will start with the audience. My question will start with Viviane. From your point of view, how can we improve the way hunger is measured globally to ensure more accurate data-driven interventions, especially in rural and underrepresented areas?
Yeah, this is a very close question to my heart. It's so important. Now, we have seen how poor measurement leads to poor policy. So, when we say zero hunger, it means that we are sure we are measuring hunger. Unfortunately, it's not the case. So, the most commonly used index for hunger, it's called the Global Hunger Index. It uses many components or 4 dimensions: undernourishment, child stunting, child wasting, and child mortality. Although this sounds fantastic, it suffers from many flaws, unfortunately. And here, okay, we did a common research led by Professor José María Montero with the collaboration with Sir Richard Roberts and myself to address this problem. So our paper was published in Equilibrium, and it is titled Measuring Zero Hunger, a Multidisciplinary Approach. So we highlighted many flaws. The first one is subjective weighting. In this index, they are allocating, any weight to each dimension. So, for example, they allocated 33% for undernourishment and then another 33% for child mortality without any justification, without any solid data. The second problem was the double counting. We noticed that we have some correlation between these dimensions, these 3 sub indices. For example, when you have undernourishment, this eventually will lead to child mortality. So it's impossible to give the same weight to the same variable. And the last problem was in data gaps in national aggregation. So many countries, especially under pressure or under war, they are not updating their statistics, and therefore they are eliminated from the index. So we don't know that they are suffering from hunger, or we fill in the blank by allocating any value to these countries. So we developed a new approach, a new index. I presented it yesterday. And in order to overcome all these problems, we used machine learning, we used the principal component analysis, the PAM, partitioning around methods, in order to fix this index. And now we have a new index that hopefully will overcome all these problems.
Richard, do you have to add something?
I'm not sure I have much to add here, but really getting to the poor populations within a country, getting to those people who don't necessarily have good access to what's going on is really important, and getting the truth to them. I think this is something that society as a whole is having problems with, discerning what is true and what isn't true. And that's why it would be good to have some place like this site that Steve Ballmer has generated, where you can actually go and test and ask questions. Is this true? Is this not true? And given the fact that the web, the internet is available everywhere, if there was a good website you could go to and know you were going to get truth, it wasn't being put out by one political party or another, but was being put out as truth, I think that could be extremely helpful. And I would like to see some efforts made to produce a site. And I think Steve Ballmer is on the correct route here. And we just need to expand the coverage that he has.
Justus?
A lot of important issues have already been mentioned. I think one of the important aspects that can play a major role is also civil society groups that they get help in informing the population, the governments with the right information. We have a lot of civil society groups that do just the opposite. But we are sitting here in a hall which has a very long Catholic tradition, and we have a representative from the Catholic Church here. And the Catholic Church is in particular influential in many developing countries. Many policymakers and societal members listen to what the Catholic Church is saying. And I think they can make a tremendous contribution to address poverty and hunger by coming up with very positive statements about the usefulness of modern biotechnology in agriculture. So that would be something that can make a major difference as well.
Nothing to add. Okay, I think that now is the time to give the audience the voice, and then
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Antonio from Portugal. And since six decades ago, until now, I lived with my brothers and sisters, my parents, in 3 continents. When I took the cognitive skills to think about what is happened since the 60s, well, almost 7 decades. And when I compare to the situation of nowadays, I see the same. I see poverty, I see anger. Other things as well, but I won't go that way. The problem, for me, are not the media only. Only the media. I think, and this question is for everyone, special Professor Roberts, but the other two. I would like to hear from you if you ever think that there is a poverty industry. It's impossible during 7 decades to have the same problem. What's up, Doc? The politicians can give all the instruments to the scientists, to the researchers, and they won't care about that. Well, okay, enjoy your instruments, your finance, and publish your articles. We don't care about that. The first question is this. Again, is there a poverty industry? And anger, of course. The second one is there is a correlation between the medical industry and the banking industry. Who finances Monsanto or other groups in the world? And the anger still exists. There are people earning much money with the anger, inequalities, poverty. Thank you. I put this question because, sorry, José, I put this question
should
because
let someone else go first. So.
because Professor Robert showed in the slide the word money, and it's displayed in me my disinterest. Thank you.
this is a very cynical question that you have raised, right? In a sense, is there a poverty industry? Meaning to say, are there people in the world that are gaining from maintaining poverty levels, right? Yes, in some circles, this is discussed. Honestly, I'm a little bit skeptical about this. Of course, I see that some groups and some people are receiving their income while working on poverty issues, right? But I'm hesitant to claim that they have not an interest to improve the situation and they like to maintain that situation just to maintain the jobs that they have. I don't like to follow this line of reasoning. And I haven't seen a lot of evidence that this is really true. But on the other hand, there is a political economy around about having political influence in specific countries by specific groups. So we know, for example, that the United States have some specific interests in specific countries. It's about China that has interest. European Union, we observe this from Russia. And that not necessarily always implies that with the institutions and they collaborate there, that these institutions have an interest in reducing poverty in their countries. Look at, for example, what is happening in Venezuela. We have other historical examples. Look at the Khmer Rouge regime in Asia, in Cambodia, and there are other examples. So yes, this exists, and for us as a scientist, now I'm coming back. What is our role as a scientist there? We have to work and try to understand better how these mechanisms are working and what can be done. And I like to refer back to the book by Asimoglu and Robinson. They show a lot. They have a number of cases showing the importance of institutions, but they also had a problem to come up what to do, right? So what kind of lesson should we learn from this and to develop a strategy how to overcome or how to introduce institutional change? And that is still one of the major problems, and we haven't solved this. We don't have yet good, successful strategies how to do this. And that is also a task that we as economists and social scientists have to more work on. So that is only what I can add on this very challenging question.
Also, Vicente, would you like to add something? No. Viviane, yes.
You are very refined, Justus, in your answer. I will be blunt. Yes, I do believe, shame on us, we are discussing hunger in the 21st century here. I think that the world has enough resources to eliminate hunger. And yes, I agree with you. We have politics. I will use the word they, not to mention whom. Yes, they want poor countries to be more poor. No one can convince me that in Africa, many African countries, that they don't have the resources to eliminate their hunger. How can I be convinced that, for instance, in Gaza, you have on daily basis 1,000 children are dying on a daily basis? How can I be convinced? And they have all the resources, okay? They are not allowed to live. How can you convince me that in Lebanon we have people dying from hunger in the south of Lebanon, and yet Lebanon has a lot of resources? We have politics behind this. And some countries, some big countries, they don't want those countries to raise and to, to have the power. Resources means power. I invited someone to explain to my students how they do chocolate, okay, chocolate making. So they started with the theoretical part and they started with the raw material, how they are important from African countries. up until now, those African countries, they don't have the right to have those machines that transforms cacao into the chocolate. They import the chocolate to Germany and to Belgium and to France to make these chocolates. Come on, this is a decision, in my opinion, to not allow to those countries to be, to save them from hunger. I think it's our responsibility, and it's a shame that we are still discussing hunger. What's the, it's not a matter of science. Okay, so it's very easy. We proved it. We know that hunger should not take place, that GMOs can really solve the problem, that in many countries they have all the resources, but this is a decision. It is a political decision coming from some countries. You can count those countries on your hand, 5 countries, 6 countries. It's a decision, yes. Thank you. Sorry for being blunt.
No, I like to be a little. So if I wasn't blunt enough, I like to be a little bit more blunt. Look at what is happening in the in the Near East, but also in other places, right? It's a power struggle that we see between different interest groups here. In the Near East, is mainly between religious groups that we observe. There are different Islamic groups fighting each other. In other countries in Africa, there we observe different policy groups that are fighting each other. In the Congo, if you go to Nigeria, etc. That is what we observe, and that is what is resulting in hunger. So it's a power struggle mainly about natural resources, about money. That where the money comes in, and that is what we have to better understand. And also question the role that we are playing: Europe, United States, Russia, and China.
We are funding those.
Yeah, they are fighting those.
They are funding the fights within countries, but they are not funding people to develop themselves, unfortunately. We fund people to fight together.
My problem that I have is that this is an issue of politics on the one hand and on morality on the other. And I think what we've seen since the days of colonialism and then the breakup of some of the colonies, the people who colonized those countries have not been prepared to sort of pay reparations and try to repair some of the damage that they did when they were colonial power. And it is within it's easy for us in principle to reduce poverty. It's not something that we should allow in any country. It's something we can deal with, but unfortunately, the politicians most often don't want to deal with it because they are supported by the very rich. And we've already seen Elon Musk, right? The first thing he did was to stop USAID. I think that's the most disgusting thing I've heard in recent years. Absolutely appalling that he would do that. And he doesn't care. Bill Gates made some very nasty comments about Musk because of this, because Bill Gates, through the Gates Foundation, has actually been trying to solve some of these problems, and I would say is doing a good job. Musk, terrible. I think anybody who owns a Tesla should dump it. There are garages now that offer to cover the signs on Tesla so you don't know it's a Tesla for free. They don't charge you to do this. And it's appalling. It's just appalling. And, the very rich run the world in many cases with no thought whatsoever for the poor. And it's sad. It's very, very sad. You would have thought, we would have become more moral as we get better, as we get to be a more civilized society. But I'm afraid it's not true. How we change it, I don't know. But there are many Nobel laureates who would speak out in favor of this if we thought anyone would listen.
Okay, someone in the audience would like to have the last question, because if not, we will finish this fantastic round table. There, the question there. The microphone, okay.
I don't have a question. I all want to agree when say that the police are not helping us. I'm from Africa and I'm from Mozambique as well. And now we discovered that we have there some project called it Sustenta. That project was to help people growing in agriculture. But now we discovered that that project it's only one more project from other projects that are stealing from the people, and a government or government, but police are stealing the people. And now we discovered that project is so it is the thing that we can say how to do uh, and how to solve that problem that we have with our politics. Because are happening more things, they go around the world asking to help us. But when they come back, they take these all things for own pocket and doesn't do nothing. In fact, and are hungry and people are suffering about that thing. So it's something that make us like, where are we going? What do they want in our country? Something like that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. No more comments. And then thank you very much, our distinguished guest, in this fantastic discussion from this morning. And now I would like to invite Father Angel to be here with me for a conversation that will end this morning session. And then thank you very much. A big applause for these people who join me in this table.